Welcome to our live Q&A with Sir Bryn Terfel and Wasfi Kani CBE. We're here to discuss Sir Bryn's career and his forthcoming Falstaff at Grange Park Opera. I'm Louis Wise. I do know how to turn on a microphone sometimes, just not tonight. I'm an arts journalist and I often write for the Telegraph, and I have interviewed Sir Bryn already and Wasfi separately for the paper, but not together tonight. So this is a first for me too. I'm very excited. Okay. Now, we've got to introduce two people. First of all, I'm going to introduce, he actually needs no introduction. He's obviously one of the great bass baritones of all time, not just of his native Wales or indeed of the UK, but of the world. And he's been going for over 30 years and is a great ambassador for his art form. Please welcome Sir Bryn. Can you turn on your camera, please? Hello.
Hi, Louis.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. And congratulations on saying my surname correctly. Oh, it was music to my ears. The Roald R and the perfect Terfel. How many times have I been called Tearful, Teflon,
Who would
Green
do that?
Turtle, everything?
I would never do that to your surname, you know that.
10 out of 10, the heritage of your Welsh.
Thank you.
Came through, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. We should tell the audience I have a Welsh grandmother that I've bored Sir Bryn about already, but she would be very upset to know that I was murdering his surname earlier. So anyway, another name that I might also murder, we'll see, but she also really does need no introduction. Wasfi Kani is one of the great arts impresarios of our age, and she has launched so many great country house operas already, and now currently has brought her Grange Park Opera to West Horsley Place in Surrey. She even built her own theatre, as we probably all know. Hello, Wasfi.
Hello, Louis. Said my name perfectly.
Thank you. I'm warming up, you see. It's a slow burn here. So, how are you both? Well, yes.
Ladies first.
Ladies. Wasfi.
I thought we'd go in order of fame, so I thought you were going to go first. I'm very well, thank you. That's my public. I'm always very well.
And Sir Bryn, how are you feeling?
Very well, thank you. I have a household that's very happy as well, because my 3-year-old girl Lily went to primary school today, because in Wales, of course, they've opened very slowly to under 7s. So she came home with a big smile on her face, having seen her friends and seen her teachers.
Lovely. Well, that's been 2 months of homeschooling, right? At least it's quite a lot to deal with.
Yes, indeed. But it's been fun because the teachers have been exceptional in their dedication and hard work. And what they have done for these 3-year-olds has been so exciting. Very simple things artistically and doing Play-Doh and just very, very clever in the way that they've learned songs as well. Because music, of course, is very important in Wales. But these teachers, hats off, and I do hope they get the vaccine very quickly.
Although I have to say, I imagine also for you, it must be lovely to obviously be at home with her during this time and have perhaps extra attention given to her. You know, that's perhaps one of the few good sides of this, is that you can get to be with your young children more than ever, right?
Well, Louis, you can imagine that in a profession like we have in this operatic world, we're away for most probably 10 months of the year. But yes, undoubtedly, one of the benefits has been to be home for quite an extended period. But of course, the negative things that you're not carrying on with your profession, you're not earning, you're not having your keep, your bread and butter. But it's been fantastic to be home. And yes, we gave birth also to a youngster called Alfie now, who's 8 months old. So the house has been fantastic in the last year. Didn't start very well, Louis, because I broke my leg in Bilbao last January. An innocuous slip on the pavement in Bilbao, which meant my 2 months in that year was already gone. And that was very important. 2 new productions of The Flying Dutchman and the Welsh National Opera's Bluebeard Castle. And I was desperately sad, of course, knowing that it was, of course, the right decision for everyone But these are things that you will hopefully think, oh, they'll come back. They'll come back.
Out of interest, is that your worst kind of stage injury? Have you done anything worse than that, or?
Louis, I've had 3 back operations, and that's purely, I think it is because of raked stages. I hate raked stages in the opera houses.
Oh, right.
Of course, directors think that visually it's brilliant for the audience, but to stand on a rake for a singer is just something that you do not do. You know, my music room here where I'm sat is not raked. You need to stand in a perfect position to be able to be relaxed, to be able to breathe. And, you know, the older you get, you know, of course, when I was young and singing all these Mozart roles, I was enjoying the quality of my voice and the fact that I could do it very easily. But with age, certain things become much different, like your knowledge of music, your knowledge of portrayals, how you think of legato, how you think of dynamics of the voice. And the older you get, the more in-depth you have of everything that you do on the stage. It's not as easy, but you enjoy it, I think, even more. So yes, those rake stages. I remember telling the Royal Opera House, Louis, when they did their new Flying Dutchman, please, for heaven's sake, give me a ship and no rake. And I think they misheard me because they didn't have a ship and they had a horrendous rake. And I thought, oh my goodness. And they knew that first day that I was walking into that rehearsal room that my chin would hit the floor. But you know, you have to carry on. And yes, so 3 back operations, not conducive to being on the stage, but I think I've been able to manage my way past it through some good swimming. Unfortunately, I haven't swum for a year, but swimming is very, very good for the core strength of that back. And the foot now, thank you, is back to strength as well.
Good. Well, I mean, you were kind of circling around that idea, aren't we, of rest? I mean, obviously the last year has been difficult for so many reasons. We know this already, and I'm going to ask both of you about that. But maybe with you, Bryn, can we talk, has there been a nice enjoyable moment of enforced rest? Have there been pros to this kind of hiatus, artistic hiatus?
Well, this pandemic, Louis, I worry about the young singers that start their career, and I'm constantly thinking, what can I do when this lockdown develops into something that we can go back into a theatre? And the way we help, Louis, is to be a part of an evening of song or opera or a requiem, to give something back to a certain charity. We haven't been able to do that. So hopefully the time of these self-employed performers will be when we get back to the theatre, and we can look after ourselves once again. Here in Wales, Louis, I think there's been a cultural recovery fund, and they've given in excess of 57 million towards the arts, but also towards that sector, that you ensure that the heritage and the creativity is still there. So they've been helping venues, theatres, and of course, so the freelancers have had a help as well. And Wales have been one of the first to start giving money to the freelance people, over £7 million to about 2,800 people. So yes, I'm at home, but I'm worrying about my colleagues. But hopefully we can all pull together and help each other in certain ways. But as sitting here at the moment, I have a score of Il Maestro di Cappella, which is by Cimorosa, which is where the bass baritone takes over conducting an orchestra. I've got Schubert's Winterreise. This is something that I have never ever performed in my life, but opened it once in the house of Jonas Kaufmann. That's the first time that I opened the page to sing the first song. So I've been studying that, but also I wanted to kind of have the same duet partner for the Winterreise. So I consider maybe Somerville's Maud as one of those song cycles from the UK. So hand in hand, learning both. Been looking at one-act operas as well. Been keeping on working on the Bluebeard's Castle. I think something might come back. I've restarted learning Peter Grimes 2 years in advance of doing it in Vienna. So I hopefully, you know, you need to set yourself goals even within a pandemic and worrying about everybody else.
Absolutely. I mean, how are you finding Winterreise? Such an extraordinary, you know, work. How are you finding that so far?
Extraordinary. That is, of course. And I've sang Beethoven's And die Ferne Geliebte as well, which was kind of that narrative that Schubert would take on, such a fantastic journey. By the way, Tony Pappano was here in the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama with Ian Bostridge last week, and they did a performance of the Winterreise for the students, socially distanced, but also streamed. Gerald Finley was also here singing Die schöne Mullerin. So, you know, these are wonderful cycles that people want to sing, and Ian, of course, most probably it was his 100th time of singing that cycle, but
Yeah.
Mr. Finley wanted to start singing Die schöne Mullerin. You know, people like Peter Schreier said that they would never sing this song cycle until they were of a specific age. And I think that's my reasoning behind Winterreise. If only now I can find an accompanist who's maybe a little bit older than me. You know, when Verdi wrote Falstaff, he was an octogenarian, but Boito was half his age and could do the same things that Verdi was doing. You know, he wrote the libretto, but he could also write operas himself. So that's how I'm thinking of my journey in Winterreise. And I've just bought a couple of nice books that Thomas Hampson introduced me. So my reading will start, of course, when I have a couple of moments looking after a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old.
There's that small matter, isn't there? Yes. I don't think 3-year-olds are that helpful when you're trying to read books, from what I've seen in my life. I don't think, you know, unless the font is very big, I don't think they're very interested, are they? Actually, I'm going to ask you one final thing, Bryn. Is this then where you are practicing every day? Is this how we would find you most days, and at your piano? Is this the daily practice?
Oh, famously, Hans Hotter said the best performances of Wotan that I ever sang was in my music room. And yes, this is where I feel comfortable. This is where I'm learning most of my music. This is where I can play the music loudly without interrupting anybody. The music room is at the end of the garden, so I'm far away from everybody. But I've still managed to find some time, Louis, to put music on. It's been very, very important to me in lockdown, and a whole eclectic side of music, of course. I was texted by Joseph Kaleha, who is one of the people that have been very important for Wasfi. Of course, she chose 3 of us: Sir Simon Keeneside, myself, very fortunate to be in that list, and Joseph Kaleha. And he is, I think he's preparing a Verdi Requiem in Malta. So hopefully I can be a part of that. So these are the things that when I hear, if I'm going to sing the Verdi Requiem, I don't sing it very often. I'm not asked to sing it, but perhaps the people think that I'm not enough of a bass voice to be singing it. But I absolutely adore the Verdi Requiem, well, anything that Verdi wrote, really. So first thing I do is, of course, I get the score. When Wasfi tells me, would you like to do Falstaff? I have a ricordi facsimile of the handwritten Giuseppe Verdi score, and I can go back to that and look at his notes and look at different things that was written before it was published, and it's just it gives you a new light. That palette is always different.
Dare I ask how you got hold of that?
You can ask, and I dare you. You've already asked, right?
Not any nefarious means.
There is an American guy in the Staatsoper in Vienna who is looking after the archive. And they tend to think that maybe he's found something in the attic of the Vienna State Opera. But what he is brilliant at is to find first editions of scores and music, even manuscripts and letters from all over the world. And the first thing that Peter will do when you arrive at a rehearsal is, hey, Bryn, I've got a first edition of Falstaff. Would you like to see it? And somehow he knows your fees in Vienna, so that facsimile will cost exactly your first fee of the first performance. So I managed to dodge him many times in those beautiful corridors in the Staatsoper in Vienna. But people like Riccardo Muti, the conductor, have bought incredible manuscripts of him. And I have bought a Marriage of Figaro, Così fan tutte, with a second pressing of the special plates for those books. And this facsimile I bought off him many years ago, having just performed Falstaff for the first time in the Staatsoper in Vienna. Because as you can imagine, when you sing certain roles in different opera houses, the tension and pressure is always the same. When you open in La Scala, when you open in Australia, like I did in '99. So when Wasfi will open the Falstaff in the Grange, in the beautiful forest, this will be, again, as exciting as all the others, but with that facsimile in mind and trying to live what that octogenarian put on a piece of paper in his hotel in Milan.
Can I ask a question? So, Bryn, is it a facsimile of the Verdi manuscript, or is it the first edition?
It's a facsimile of what Verdi wrote before it went into being published.
Amazing.
And there's maybe 560 copies of it.
Wow, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I'll bring it.
Do you often think of history? I mean, it's fascinating. When you perform these roles, do you have the history in mind now? Or do you manage to clear it out when you get on stage?
No, I like to have it there. You know, you also like to read, people have said, like for instance, W.H. Auden said that having Shakespeare written about the character of Falstaff, but it took 200 years for him to be actually truly alive, but in the world of music. Yes. I thought that was an excellent thought. As Harold Bloom, you know, the eminent English literature professor, said that, of course, you hear about in Shakespeare how people like Antony and Cleopatra, Hamlet, Lear, how they died. Either you hear about it or like Iago, he walked off the stage and was faced death by very quietly. But Falstaff, of course, you don't want Falstaff to die, because Falstaff, he is life itself. And I think after this pandemic, we will be thinking of all the people that were lost in this horrific, fragile, frightening virus. But we are hoping now for the spring, we can see buds fighting through. They don't know about the pandemic, but when Falstaff will come, I will have that in my mind. He is life. And those two little characters, Fenton and Nanetta, I think, who will be sung by Chloe Morgan and Luis Gomez. Luis was in the Cardiff Singer of the World a couple of years ago, but he's also one of the young artists from the Royal Opera House. And to see Natalia Romaniu, who is hitting the notes all over the world now, and truly a magnificent singer. And she's from Wales, although, of course, the name might not place her in South Wales, but she's from Swansea. And thank you. Also, we have Jeff Lloyd Roberts as well, which is a perfect casting as Bardolfo. But yeah, no, it's something that we will look forward to bringing life onto the stage once again when we can, in the right safety.
Exactly, I know. And actually, you've reminded me, just talking about that, Wasfi, I'm about to ask you about how this came to be. I mean, we're going to get on to why this production now. But actually, I've just seen a question on my little list that coincides with a lot of mine for you, Bryn, which is this. Deirdre asks, I saw your Falstaff at Covent Garden around 20 years ago. How has your interpretation evolved or changed? And I was thinking about that just, you first did Falstaff in 1999. So from those first few iterations, how's the role matured for you?
I'm sure Deirdre's saying that with a little tongue in cheek, isn't she? She knows, of course, my personality on the stage is constantly evolving. I cannot stay in a straitjacket when a different director comes, a different conductor comes. You can't go from doing it at the Metropolitan Opera with one conductor and do exactly the same with the next conductor, because you know that conductor will want to do it completely different. So hence those clean slates. And yes, although this is personally my opinion, the first time you do a role, that production stays with you. And I had a terrific production in Australia that has stayed with me, but of course I work around it. And of course the role of Falstaff is totally dependent on how you look and how these fat suits are on that stage, Of course, you have to think of him as that huge hill of flesh, as was taken from Henry IV, Part 1. He is that horseback breaker. So, of course, you have to have the colleagues around you as well. He starts magnificently because you've been most probably in a makeup chair for an hour, giggling at being transformed into this roly-poly knight. And then he has very suspect colleagues by his side as well. And who would have thought that, what a terrible idea to write 2 letters to 2 ladies from the same village in the same handwriting. What a mountain of lard.
But nowadays people do that with texting, don't they? It's very easy to do on WhatsApp, I think.
Louis, I knew you were going to say that. Someday there's going to be a Falstaff that texts.
Can you imagine?
But what is incredible is, of course, the different societies and the women. Of course, in that first scene that they're in, they laugh. But interestingly enough, of course, he who has the last laugh laughs better. Or as John Cleese said once, he who laughs learns best. But of course, Falstaff and Ford only laugh in the fugue, at the very last page. So that's that. Then they know they've been duped by the cuckolds. They've been duped by the ladies of Windsor, and they know where they stand then.
Very good point. Good point.
Which brings us, I think, to the Grange Park version. Wasfi, I think we would need a 3-hour Q&A to talk about all the stuff you've been doing in the last year. I know for you, you didn't take the pandemic lying down. There was you lost a season and you found one, and you've done so many things. And how have you found the whole thing? Where are you now with the Grange Park? Are you excited for the new summer season? You feeling confident?
I keep saying, even if I have to go to prison, we're going to have a season. Fortunately, what was said in Parliament earlier on today suggests that I'm going to be able to do it legally and I won't have to go to prison, though I have many times. So I kind of feel that the arts, it's the responsibility of the arts to sort of bear a torch of hope in these very difficult times. And of course, personally, I do find it incredibly sad. I find it incredibly sad. I know a lot of amazing musicians and they haven't got any work. It's completely tragic. They've trained for many, many, many years. They've trained for decades and they haven't got any work. And of course, they're only artists as long as they're performing. Though Bryn thinks he's giving his best Votan in his music wrong. Really, and he's an artist today because he's performing to 500 people. So I did find it very sad, but I thought it's our duty to fight and to make things happen, which is why I did all this thing called the Found Season, which is all on our website. But Bryn made one mistake earlier on. So Bryn, you said that you were in the illustrious company of Joseph Collare and Simon Keenlyside, and yourself did concerts at home. But there was another illustrious concert from home, and that was from Wyn Evans of Go Compare. And He did a joke recital from home, and he was very upset because 10,000 people watched Bryn's recital from home, and only 8.5 watched Wyn's. Wyn won't let us forget that.
Yeah, Bryn beat Wyn. That was it.
Don't worry, Wasfi. They've just finished filming about Wyn's family, how his mother rang Steven Spielberg to get E.T. into the little movie theatre in Carmarthen. So he's over it.
Bryn, this story about Wyn and his mother, I mean, it's worth another hour's programme on its own. It's the most hilarious story. Yeah.
Wasfi, his mum would remind me of you, actually, and the passion that she had for that theatre. But don't worry about prison. You're already going in there with Pimlico to do Hairspray, I hear. So you'll be fine.
I was going to say, I can't imagine prison phasing you at all, Wasfi. I mean,
I've taken Bryn into prison, actually. Do you remember?
Oh.
I actually took him onto the wing at Wandsworth. I've worked in prison for 35 years. And the day Bryn was there, I wanted to show him the whole kind of process of prison. And so we were in the yard at Wandsworth where the vans drive in. I was saying to Bryn, oh yeah, this is how they bring the prisoners in these vans. And there was a joker inside the van, a prisoner, and he knocked on the window and he said, water, water. Which
no.
And then I took Bryn onto the wing itself before the performance and knocked on the door of one of the wonderful performers who was just sort of getting ready to come onto the stage. And he opened his cell door and Bryn was standing there. And this prisoner said to Bryn, I know you, you're the man who sings at the rugby.
Oh.
Do you remember, Bryn?
Yeah.
Of course, it's one of those days that I will never forget. And of course, the performance of West Side Story was incredible. Yes, going into his cell was frightening, but I had to ask him the question, why are you in this jail? And he said, you don't want to know. But the past 2 weeks has been riveting for him, and that he dreaded the last performance because he then had to go back into the life in Wandsworth prison, and he didn't know how he'd react to being without music and the camaraderie of artists working together. And that's what our profession is all about, collaboration.
Yes, absolutely.
I also wanted to bring in the rest of the season, if that's all right. I mean, Falstaff is obviously the jewel and the crown, that goes without saying. I mean,
so it's a lovely production of Falstaff, nothing Falstaff. So and it comes from the theatre in Parma. So beautiful costumes. I'm very pleased with it. Then we're doing a world premiere, which is nothing like Falstaff. It's the life and death of Alexander Litvinenko. And we're doing a Bohème. And then I think the opera that I'm most excited about is a Rimsky-Korsakov, and it's called The Maid of Pskov. But I didn't think that title was good enough, so I've renamed it Ivan the Terrible, because it's about Ivan the Terrible. And we've got an amazing tenor coming from America called Carl Tanner. He sung Samson at the Met. And the woman singing Princess Lisa is Evelina Dobracheva, incredible singer. So David Pountney's directing it. So this is a piece that David Pountney chose.
It's a rich, full season, isn't it? It's funny renaming the Rimsky-Korsakov. I wonder what other operas names you don't like that you'd like to change.
We're all going to die. We might as well just do what we want.
Oh no, we're not. There's green shoots of hope this year, I feel. I actually wanted to ask you, but we have to get to the questions, I think, soonish. I wanted to ask you if you developed any new talents or skills in lockdown. Wasfi, any new? I mean, you have so many talents already.
I didn't have a baby. I think I'm 65 years old. I didn't have a baby, but I have actually taken up. I decided at the beginning of lockdown that I wanted to be at the end having learned something new, and I've always been rather intrigued by baskets. People have been taking willow and soaking it and making solid structures out of it for tens of thousands of years. So I taught myself how to make baskets, and I've actually got one here to show you. This is my 6th basket. Do you like it? Yeah?
Beautiful. Will we be seeing those at Grange Park Opera? Will they be on
I need to
sale?
make a few more. I've only made 7 so far. And then the other skill that I had to embrace was roofing. I only do flat roofs. Yes, I only repair flat roofs, and I did this because the roof above my bedroom was leaking, and I couldn't get anyone to even look at it. So I got a ladder and had a look at it myself. Spoke to somebody. He told me what to do, and I used a substance called Acripol. And then I repaired another roof, and then I repaired another roof, and now I've got my friends asking me to repair their flat roofs. It's my,
Wow.
you know, the arts aren't doing very well. You need.
I mean, opera can answer most questions in life, but not all of them, can they? This is a good example.
Roofing is the answer.
Sir Bryn, any talents, any roofs fixed at your house?
No, I've become quite, and I know it's so boring to say this because most probably everybody will say it as well. Banana bread. I'm really. I can do it from memory now. I don't need to look at Mary Berry's recipe. So cooking, and the Arga's on now in the house. So I want to start revisiting rice pudding and things like that. But changing nappies under 10 seconds is something that I'm really proficient at now. And of course, I'm reliving. It's our patron saint's day, of course, Dewi Sant on March the 1st. So let me put this into context, Louis. I had a recital planned in Monte Carlo next week. So if I would have done that recital, it meant I would have had to cancel the BBC concert for March the 1st, plus a recital in Zurich because of the 10-day rule of having to, although football teams can go wherever they want to and go from one Premiership match to another. But, and as happened in Carmarthen over the past 3 weeks, they've been filming this film for Wyn and Mark's family, you know, rules, I guess, for carrying on doing television programs. But I would have lost everything had I done Monte Carlo. So I asked Jean-Louis in Monte Carlo, please, can you reschedule? So that's what happened. And so looking forward now to the concert with the BBC on March the 1st.
Fantastic. So we can enjoy very soon, even sooner than Falstaff, exactly. I think we might be getting to question time. I feel we've got a few questions. And in fact, there's lots about art, but I have to say, I like Alan's question. Good evening, Bryn. Let's get down to the really important matter. How is your golf?
Obviously, since lockdown, it's been struggling quite a bit because all the golf courses are closed. But I've been watching a bit of golf, so trying to keep it imaginary. I am a member of Sunningdale Golf Club because I worked with Roger Waters on an opera that he'd written about the French Revolution, and he, it was very nice of him, got me to play with 10 members and to have different letters to be a member there. So whenever I sing in London, I look forward to be working on my golfing swing, but it's not very good at the moment. And I look forward to going back on the fairways because I want to test this triple fracture that I had, and I've got 9 new screws now in the bottom of my leg. Ooh. So I need to work on those.
That's tough.
And he's got 9 new screws in his leg, and he's not even a roofer.
I know. Also, I feel like just as well, you can't do any international travel because you wouldn't get through security, would you? With all those screws, you'd have to be. The metal detector would go wild as you were pushed through. So stay at home. Actually,
Louis, I'm not sure because I don't think I've flown in the last 7-8 months. So I don't know if those screws would set off those. I don't think so. The
little ones, tiny ones. I actually not just unconnected, is a question from Beatrice, who says, would like to know if there was a role that Sir Bryn found particularly difficult.
Oh, what a great question. In the beginning, it was Wotan in Die Walküre. Of course, by any yardstick, the longest role within the ring cycle and the longest of appearances on that stage. But the second act, when you start learning that second act, it's a complete nightmare, and the score was being thrown from one corner to the other. I would say to be on that stage and guiding yourself through those territories was the hardest thing, and to be able to sing that incredible farewell that Wotan has to his favorite daughter at the end was magnetic, yet so full of passionate and that incredible Everest journey that you take to learn such roles, and the amount of time that you have to be in a music room just to study these. I give you a little example. Leaving Wales with Walküre on in the car, just singing along, I would get to London and it still wouldn't have finished. I'd have to stay in my car for another hour just to get to the end of Die Walküre. So that definitely. I was asked once by Claudio Abbado to sing Simone Boccanegra. I studied it with him, but I feel the baritone voice is such a special voice in Verdi operas. Falstaff is the only one that I feel that I could sing to that beautiful legato on those high tessitura. So Boccanegra, of course, Rigoletto would be the hardest opera for me to sing. I could sing it, but it would be one of the most difficult ones. Wozzeck is the one that's really, I never completed. I was supposed to do it with Peter Stein and Abbado in Salzburg, but it was in between singing Rake's Progress and learning Arabella. So it wasn't conducive to actually studying Wozzeck. So I kept away with it, but he is certainly a character that I want to bring back to life, because I think now I'm 55 years old. I think I could really perform that piece really well, even if it's me that's saying it. So just getting that opportunity to sing Wozzeck. So maybe, yeah, I would say Wotan. Anybody try and learn 3 pages of his first monologue in the second act. And try and memorize it in 2 weeks. Only 2 pages. You'd have fun.
I mean, you actually kind of answered this already, but I'm thinking also, are there any roles that you're surprised you haven't taken more? Are there roles you think, why haven't I done this more in my career?
Yes! Oh, goodness me. There's one role. Oh, der Vogelfänger bin ich ja, stets lustig, heißer Hauptsaß. Never, ever, ever sang Papageno.
Would you like to?
I would have loved to, Wasfi, but you'd have to think of putting on a Zauberflöte with older people past 50.
Grange Park 2022, I can see it now. I've got the feeling.
No, I don't think Sir Simon Keeneside will let me get even close to that, because he was such a master at that role.
I just want to say, when in the early days, before Bryn came to do Fiddler on the Roof for us, I was talking to him about, we kind of got him booked in to do something, but we didn't know what. And Bryn and I would have kind of strange, sort of unfocused conversations. And one day, Bryn said to me, oh, the piece I'd like to do is Cardillac by Hindemith. And his piece I don't know. But as soon as he said the word Hindemith, I said, absolutely fine, Bryn, I'll do it, as long as you buy 5,000 tickets, because no one else is going to. You want to do it, Bryn?
Yes. Of course, historically, Wasfi, of course, people like Sir Donald McIntyre, from his glorious Bayreuth days, took over the role of Cadillac in the Munich State Opera. And of course, it would add to your registry of bad boys. You know, the story is compelling about selling jewelry and killing the people. That it was a very Sweeney Todd, Tosca in a sense. So yes, those are the roles that maybe, you know, I loved my time singing Mozart, and I had the great voice, I think, to sing those roles, but that I was glad that time was over, because I could go into a different field. You know, in Salzburg, my very first role was Die Geisterbote in Die Frau ohne Schatten. Now again, an excellent bass baritone role is Barak in the Die Frau ohne Schatten, which I covered. I covered Robert Hale, I remember, in Salzburg when I did Die Geisterbote. But yes, Hindemith's Cadillac. Oh, of course, maybe not a ticket seller, but obviously they do it in the Staatsoper in Vienna. They do it in the opera in Munich.
It's what the audience has been crying out for in lockdown, Sir Bryn. Hindemith. Give me some Hindemith. I keep hearing it. Well, I'm sold. You did mention Tosca. I've got a question from Jessica. She says, hi from Germany. My husband is about to sing Scarpia for the first time. We love your portrayal of him. Any advice on what not to do?
Okay. She has to really listen to this now. Take care in the end of Act 1 in the Te Deum. Obviously, when you sing roles like Wotan, you love to sing as loud as you possibly can, because he gives you that breadth of dynamic and so engulfed and deeply planted in the bass baritone voice. Never should one write that Wagner is a voice killer, because Wagner makes you think as a singer. It makes you sing dynamics, and it makes you think legato when you ever have that chance to do it. Plus, wherever the brass section is, keep away from them. Go to the other side of the stage. Do your Abschied from away from the brass. But undoubtedly, take care in the Te Deum, because it'll bite you in the backside for the second act. And you want to really be very careful with that second act. So the Te Deum, I think that's the key to unlocking that role. Of course, if he is a baritone voice, he has got nothing to worry about, apart from the lower register when he gets to that second act. So on top of that, read what Tito Gobbi wrote about the historical elements of the character of Scarpia, and that has to be ingrained in you. Your costumes you're wearing, the historical elements, the timings, where they are, his walk, the way he writes things, the way he treats people. It's just so such a character that every bass baritone just loves to sing and to perform.
Lovely, thank you. And actually, I've got a really nice question from Sandra. She says, as a bit of an opera novice, I would like to know which operas I should start with. I think this is one for both of you, actually. What would you recommend to an opera novice?
Opera novice, just go to an opera. It doesn't matter. I can't tell you which one to go to. It's all about homework when you go to the opera. You have to read the libretto, know the storyline, know the composer. You're going to spend a lot of money going to this opera house. So make sure that you know everything about it. But if I was to give you something, I would say maybe Tosca is a good one to start. Marriage of Figaro, it's a long opera, but still it's one that you would enjoy, and maybe the elements of different voices that you can enjoy. Make sure that you go to the top section of the opera as well, because that's where you get the great sound and that vision. You know, you can get wonderful tickets in opera houses these days, and I would say Carmen also is a good one, but you can always go to a Trittico and go to 3 one-act operas and leave after the second one if you want.
Wasfi, what do you
I think
recommend,
Bryn's
please?
completely wrong. So he said,
Ah.
he says you have to do all this studying. What I say is that you don't need to know anything. You just have to come to a theatre, sit in a seat. There'll be a lot of other people around you. The narrative will unfold. There's always surtitles, so you know what they're saying. And then the crucial thing about it is what you feel. You will feel something different from the people around you, but what you feel is what it's all about. You don't have to do any preparation at all. I totally disagree with Bryn. No one ever does Tritico anyway. But I think one of the great pieces to start off with is Bohème. It's a very simple, it's a brilliantly put together little opera where this huge paragraph explains something from beautiful first love to the tragic death. So I think Bohème is one of the greatest operas to start with.
Lovely. Thank you.
I also would like to add, Louis, when we did Fiddler on the Roof with Wasfi at Grange, one of the most amazing evenings that I had was after all those performances, we went actually to the Royal Albert Hall and we performed Fiddler as part of the proms. And that was just such a glorious evening of music making and everybody having fun on that stage. Really, that would have been something. I am a big fan of concert performances of operas. So if you don't want to go into the opera theatre, well, go and hear a concert version of an opera to start off with, and that might be the crescendo that you need.
We're lucky also, aren't we? Because there's so much online with streaming and so on. You can really dip your toe into if you want to listen to some Hindemith right after this Q&A, you can just slam that on and so yeah, I know what you mean. Thank you. Actually, Wasfi, there's so much more I'd love to talk to you about with Grange Park Opera. I've got one question that can be taken two ways. Nancy Wynn asks, Wasfi, can you enlighten us on how the theatre has evolved? And I feel this is a double-edged sword, because in one way we're talking about how opera has evolved recently with the pandemic, but also I think Nancy might be referring to your beloved building, to your stage. How is that doing?
Theatre in the Woods. Well, if you think about the evolution of theatre since the earliest times, I'm not going to cover that.
That's not, we've got 10 minutes.
And if we do the evolution of opera, I'm not going to do that already, but I probably could. So the theatre, I think the first time we opened in 2017 in West Horsley Place, it didn't have a brick exterior. It was just the breeze blocks, which is the inner skin. So we've done all of that, and that's all gorgeous. But the bit that I added most recently, which I'm very, very pleased about, is I gave the whole theatre a skirt of a sort of colonnade, so you can have a passeggiata outside the theatre. And because I'm in love with classical world, I wanted it to look a bit like a sort of a colonnade in Bologna, but the pillars are made of tree trunks. It's really amazing. So there are these 14 pillars of the colonnade. And then my other great achievement, which I think I must have done this because I anticipated a coronavirus pandemic, is we built a round lavatory building, which is actually quite big, and it's called the Lavatorium Rotundum. And very spacious inside. It's actually got a sort of hole in the middle. It is a round building, and it's got an exit, a very, very wide exit and a very wide entrance, so that there's no bunching, which is one of the problems with this pandemic, is trying to keep people apart. So when you come along in the summer, the loos were built for a pandemic.
And we Brits love that. I mean, obviously, I think everyone across the world, but this is important to us when we enjoy our culture. And also another thing I have to say was, one thing I love about Grange Park Opera is you have a great eye with your programming and the merch and so on. I remember last year you always do a lovely. Have we got any nice merchandise coming this year? Because for me,
actually, well, one of the things I'm thinking of doing, but I can't quite decide what to do. I buy sort of stuff at Bonham's that's incredibly beautiful that no one would to get round to buying, but they're historic pieces, like a stool from the 17th century, the kind of stool that you sit on, not the other kind of stool. And so you think this item of furniture survived the Great Fire of London? So I buy a few of those things and we sell those during the festival.
Lovely, thank you. I think also I've got a question for Bryn that takes us a bit outside of opera. I've got a lovely question from Max. Hi Bryn, big fan. I've always considered your Rodgers and Hammerstein and Alan J. Lerner albums to be among the best, most artful projects you've ever recorded. Would you ever consider doing more of those types of albums, expanding on the American songbook repertoire, even a sequel to the Rodgers and Hammerstein? Is that something you consider, Bryn?
Right. So my favorite recordings are Schumann Faust Szene that I did with the Berlin Philharmonic and Claudio Bado, and my Kindertotenlieder by Mahler with Giuseppe Sinopoli. But I love the Rodgers and Hammerstein Lerner because I was brought up in the miscellaneous concert platform with male voice choirs, and they didn't want to hear the first monologue of Hans Sachs. They wanted to hear music that they enjoyed. So I think they're very, very important in my development as an artist. And to have Deutsche Grammophon pay for 7 days of recording of Rodgers and Hammerstein and taking me to New York to study with a man called Peter Howard, who'd worked with the best on Broadway. Was just something that I thrived upon and I absolutely adored, choosing the repertoire from different, some of the songs are sung by women, but of course they worked perfectly well for the bass baritone voice as well. So I've had my lieder and English song as well, but these are thank you very much for enjoying the Rodgers and Hammerstein, because they stood me in good stead to sing again with male voice choirs in different kind of concerts.
Part of me wonders, does that kind of work, do those songs at all inform your work in opera? Can the two help each other, or are they really very different disciplines that just are in very separate spheres for you?
They're all difficult to sing. Everything's difficult to sing unless you have that hard work and dedication in your music room. You have to study these, and singing in English, Louis, is one of the most important languages, because everybody knows exactly what, not to say that, when I went to La Scala to do my debut as Figaro in Le Nozze di Figaro, my Italian was hopefully as perfect as it could get, because Riccardo Muti would be the first one in the Sala Gialla to be telling me, look, you have to work harder on this. I think singing, whatever style of music that you are involved in, has to have that sense of enjoyment and dedication. These songs started with unamplified voices, and they were trained voices. So, and we're all as trained now to be able to sing and encounter different styles of music. I love working on my lieder repertoire in this music room, from Pfitzner to Brahms to Dupac to Schumann, Schubert. It's just a beautiful geography that we can have if you want to do it, Louis. And that's your personal dilemma sometimes, is, do I need to learn that Schubert song tomorrow? I listened today to a Karl Löwe piece. It's called Gregor auf dem Stein, and it's a 40-minute song. And I was thinking, oh, Bryn, where would you sing that? But, I loved listening to it. It was just magnificent. Lily was in school. I had an hour while Alfie was sleeping. So I gave my time to Karl Löwe.
Lovely. And did you know it before? Is it a new discovery for you?
I heard about it. It's like these big, Wolf songs like Prometheus and the Earl King by Schubert. It's just very dramatic, and they're there. They're there for you to buy, to study, and hopefully sometimes maybe perform.
Lovely. I mean, I have a worrying feeling, which was the end of the session now, which I hate to say. I don't want to, and I feel very bad because we've had lots of amazing questions. Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody who's been messaging. And I apologize to those of you who haven't. whose questions I haven't been able to put to Sir Bryn and Wasfi. Anything else we want to talk about quickly before we leave, Bryn and Wasfi? We need to highlight again, Falstaff opens June 10th, I think, is that right? June 10th at Grange Park Opera, opening the season. And Sir Bryn, any parting thoughts?
Well, I'll only solidify the fact that you started in Wasfi's introduction that she's given such young singers opportunities, and the cast of Falstaff in itself, a wonderful baritone for Ford, and I think that is always such an important role in David Stout, and we've already mentioned the wonderful Alice in Natalia Romaniu. I think Sarah Fulgone is also singing there. But to give these young singers a chance as well, like Luis Gomez and Chloe Morgan. So I would love to someday be in an opera house choosing a cast to sing in a particular opera, like Don Giovanni, for instance. Goodness, I would love to cast that opera, but be one that is involved, because whenever I'm in a different country, I make sure that I go to concerts, I go to the theatre, I go to other operas, just to keep tabs on that pulse. So, yes, Falstaff is looking fantastic for this. It'll be the first singing that I would have done since my very first attempt at Fidelio in Graz last summer. So I want a vaccine. Please let these 50-year-olds get the vaccine.
You're too young. You're just too young for your own good.
Before we start rehearsing, and hopefully everybody keep safe and keep to those rules and regulations, and look forward to Falstaff.
I was vaccinated on Saturday.
Well, please don't go on any roofs. That's it. Wasfi, stay off the roofs. Sir Bryn, stay at the piano. We'll be fine. Thank you, both of you, so much. It's been lovely. Hopefully everybody watching has been enjoying themselves too. Thank you for your patience. And again, thank you for your questions, the ones we asked and that we didn't. And thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think that's it. We have to say goodbye.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you so much. And looking forward to seeing you this summer.